message to the billionaire class: you can't have it all.
Hello, and welcome to the evolution of now. My name is Aubrey, also known as Tensai Badger, and I am joined here by my very interesting co-host, Jordan.
What's going on? I'm trying something else. All right, calm down.
All right, sorry.
I haven't introduced you yet. And also, Michael's here as well.
Yo, homies. How's it hanging?
Yo,
Okay,
dog.
LG.
Wow, that's
Up, dog.
Yo, bro. Wow.
maybe you should not.
We should just not.
And I think Chris is here somewhere.
Yeah, probably.
Where did we leave
No one
him?
cares about me. It's okay.
Always leaving these places.
Oh,
I will.
All right.
I will go on, as the
What do
song
Chris
say.
and 1,500 migrant children have in common?
Oh, God.
I
Fuck you,
leave them
Michael.
around in places.
What?
Say it again. Say it again.
What was that?
What, do you not hear about that story?
No, we didn't hear what you said.
Oh, no, ICE lost 1,500 children. No big
What?
deal.
You lost 1,500 children?
No,
what the hell are
ICE
you
did.
doing?
The
Oh,
American.
ICE.
Yeah.
ICE apparently
Okay.
lost 1,500 kids.
Yeah,
Mm.
we know some of them ended up with human traffickers. We don't know where the rest are. But there's
Oh.
literally 1,000
this is a
children.
really bad joke, Michael, and you should
Lost.
just bail.
I'm still not sure what that has to do with Chris, but okay.
Exactly. Just bail. It's okay. This is the sad state of affairs in this show here sometimes.
Yeah.
It's
It
not winning
was supposed to be
anymore.
a joke. It ended up being kind of not. So,
Yeah,
okay.
kind of horrific.
Are we going to call that our first story for the day?
Weird.
No, why not?
The UK just not winning anymore. It's weird.
So in Ohio, there was a guy who had the brilliant idea of hiding his gun in the broiler of his Maytag oven. He,
Oh, I thought I was
forgot
the
to
only
tell
one
his-
that did that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He forgot to tell his girlfriend about it though. So when she went to go make dinner, it kind of caused problems.
Yeah. What's the worst
Yeah.
place you're going to go to hide a gun? A
Yeah.
loaded gun.
So, and then after she started hearing gunfire, which she thought was coming from outside, because, why would you think the gunfire was coming from inside the oven? She called him and he told her to get down, and then he ran to open the broiler to secure the gun. And so apparently he got shot by the broiler at least twice. Just so you know, guns don't kill people. Maytag ovens kill people.
Yep. Apparently.
He's not dead. Though. He's just seriously injured. Just seriously injured. Just.
Only seriously. Yeah.
Yeah. It's okay. It's not a mass shooting or anything because nobody died. Actually,
Yeah.
he was the only one shot. Mass shooting. But yeah.
Yeah. Thankfully for the
the,
girlfriend. Jeez.
The county police detective said, please don't store your guns anywhere that's hot. Don't put your gun in an appliance. They make things for that, and an oven is not one of the things.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah.
So,
That oven is so gangster.
Wow. Yeah, dog.
Oh, there's going to be like a Netflix original series now about this oven, the crime-fighting oven that just...
crime fighting oven.
Owns the streets.
Mm,
Yeah.
It'll be like The Wire, but
There's a drug deal going on in a kitchen somewhere. The oven's got it.
this crime's about to get
Let it-
roasted.
Then the oven like pulls the sunglasses off, all cool and stuff. Yeah, that's a good idea. But yeah, I mean, I will say, us humans do stupid things. Like I told you guys before the show, I've done some pretty stupid things, not with a gun, but close with a BB gun.
It's fine.
When I was younger, I did some really, really dumb things, guys. I had this BB gun that looked just like an actual handgun, and I even like pulled the little orange tip off of it to make it look even more like a gun if you're not looking correctly at it, and I used to play with it all the time. I used to, load rounds into it and shoot them at stuff a lot. And one day I was at my computer. I had it sitting next to me on my bed that was right next to my computer. My nephew, I can't remember how old he was. He was not even in his teens yet or anything like that. He was still kind of young. Came into the room. I wasn't really paying enough attention. He picked it up. Thankfully, he shot me with it and not himself. But yeah, it could have been really, really bad if he shot himself. And that would have been my fault. And it still was my fault. He picked it up, shot me in the side of the face, hit me in the eye. And I only have one good eye because I was born with glaucoma. And he shot me in the one good eye that I have in the side of it. And I could be blind today had it turned out any worse than it was. I actually had a little welt on the side of my eye for a few, like a week or two or something afterwards. It was pretty messed up. So I've done some really, really stupid and irresponsible things with a BB gun, and another situation where I did something really stupid, even stupider possibly, was I moved at one point, and my infinite wisdom as a young 20-something, I thought, I don't know what I was thinking, actually. I moved from one location to another, and during the move, I actually put my BB gun in the glove box of my car, and then I forgot about it. And then it sat there until I got pulled over one day. And then the cop asked me for my registration and my insurance and everything. My registration and insurance card are in the glove box. I opened the glove box, and I was like, oh, that's a BB gun. I pulled it out of the glove box, put it on the ground, and then the cop was like, wait, what? And then in my infinite wisdom, I just said, yeah, see, it's a BB gun. And I pick it up again and pull the clip out of it to show him that it's a BB gun. Unbeknownst to me, I never looked over. I never knew this happened, but my girlfriend was in the car. She said that the cop pulled out his gun, like, in a split second and was aiming it straight at me. I had no idea. I didn't know that happened at all. And, like, I was sort of in a panic mode at the time. And yeah, like, the basics gist of the story, though, is we do some really stupid things at times. And this guy did a really, really stupid thing. Thankfully, no one ever got shot, other than me in the side of the face with a BB gun. Thankfully, it wasn't a real gun. Otherwise, I really would have been blind, maybe dead at this point. But, yeah. I can, in some ways, relate to stupid, because I've done more than my share. But, like...
Well, this happens with real guns as well. People get familiar with things when they're around them all the time. It doesn't matter how dangerous it is. They just do.
Yeah, and that's what I was like with my BB gun as well.
Yeah,
I got that.
It's happened.
Yeah.
Studies actually show that training and people say gun safety courses and all this. Training and stuff, all that's irrelevant. If there are guns in an area, people will get shot. That's why gun free zones happen. Because we know that when there are guns in an area, people just do get shot. You can actually say guns do shoot people almost on their own because there's a definite statistical correlation there between the amount of guns in an area and the amount of gun accidents. To the point where one of my favourite stats this year that came out was that during the NRA convention, about 80,000 of the most fervent gun owners all gather in one place. So the gun accident rate across the country, not the gun crime rate, the gun accident rate drops by about 20% across the country, which is pretty significant.
Yeah, and I'd say a big part of that is because when they're inside this convention hall, they can't have their guns on them. That's why nobody got hurt. That's amazing. Just amazing.
Yeah.
It's my favorite stat this year.
Yeah. Well, and part of it is also, I mean, like, you hear stories, particularly about with, like, kids accidentally shooting their siblings and part of that is, like, a lot of times they'll talk about how they had a gun that was theirs. Their parents bought guns for them, and they're guns that even look like toys. Like, they're colored like toys. They're perfect toy size. and
like blue
part
and
of it
pink
is
and
like,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah, blue and pink and, all kinds of fun kid colors and everything. But part of that is also that encourages kids to think of guns as toys. And then when that kid grows up, they're going to continue to think of the gun as a toy. They're not going to have the same kind of respect for how dangerous the gun is that someone who didn't grow up thinking of it as a toy will have.
Yeah.
And there's actually, I think there's real questions as to the legality of buying a gun for someone who's underage, because I don't think, even if it's your own kid, I don't think that should be legal.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not legal if it's cigarettes. It's not legal if it's alcohol. Why is it legal with guns?
Yeah, it's so true. And
I'd
it's
say,
like acceptable too.
Yeah.
Like in certain areas of the country.
Yeah, I know. It's different from state to state. Like there are some states where it actually is illegal. But
I mean, when it comes to alcohol with your parents, usually like it's not like your parents would go out and buy you like alcohol. They might and bring home with you. Like, I don't think you can go to jail for giving your kid a drink when they're underage.
Yeah, you can.
But
You
can.
It's a social services issue. If you do it to excess, it's a social services issue, and
Yeah.
it can be counted as child abuse or child neglect.
all right.
But
Yeah.
it's not a criminal offence in itself.
Yeah. Providing alcohol to a minor is a criminal offense, regardless of whether that minor is your kid or not.
Really?
The difference is there are actual exceptions. Like, for example, here in Iowa, as long as the minor in question is 16, between the ages of 16 and 18, or 16 and 21, they are on your property and drinking with your permission, then it is legal.
Oh,
Yeah.
with us it's 5 and up.
But yeah,
Age of
that's
5.
sort of what I was saying though. Like,
Well,
it's
we're a
on your
lot
own
more
property.
draconian. We're a
Yeah,
lot more
you are.
draconian when it comes to alcohol
But
laws
like I
than
say,
European countries.
Age of
so.
5 sounds really young, but you got to remember if that is taken to excess, if it's actually doing harm, then it's a social services issue and it's child neglect.
Yeah.
But there's lots of kids, especially on the mainland Europe, who are 8, 9, and have a glass of watered down wine with the meals and stuff, and they start for a
Mhm.
very young age.
Yeah. I mean, well, it was kind of a funny story about how my friend, her mom basically got her not completely uninterested in beer. Was when my friend was 5 years old. She wanted to drink her mom's beer, and her mom was like, "Okay, fine." So she handed it over to her. She took a drink, and then she was like, "Ew, that's gross." She'd never even tried to drink alcohol till she was like 22 years old after that.
Yeah.
Of
Nice.
course, her mom drank like Miller Lite, which is like, but yeah. Anyway,
Beer in
so
general,
that's
though.
our-
Oof.
yeah.
Tangent
okay,
achieved,
so-
though.
Tangent achieved. Woohoo! Let's see. Jordan, did you have a story this week?
Yes, I did. I do. Goodness. So, so today, in Ireland, people are going out to vote on whether or not, or are going out to vote to either ban. Oh, excuse me. Let me start that over. So, in Ireland today, there's a vote to determine to uphold the ban on abortion or to scrap it in for a law that would let women or let people give people up to 12 weeks as the abortion period.
Basically,
so
like
as-
relaxing abortion restrictions, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All
I never. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, but
That's good.
anyway, so as we speak, there is a exit poller are saying that that there's a 69% yes to lift that ban on abortion currently, and these are multiple polls within Irish publications saying this. And so this would mark a really big turn for Ireland because this ban they had on abortion has been on the books for 3 decades now, and this would just add another progressive win for the same country that was the first to legalize gay marriage by popular vote. So they're despite being a Catholic country, they are the populace seems to be progressive minded, and they also happen to have a gay prime minister as well. So the first gay prime minister actually of Ireland's history. So currently,
that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's good to
know. So they're on a progressive streak right now, and as far as we know, is going to keep going. And a lot of in this actually, it was the cries to lift this ban was emboldened in 2012 when an Indian immigrant she came over to Ireland and she desired to get an abortion of her baby because she believed that it was a detriment to her health and it would have been very very dangerous for her to pass it. So, but of course they denied her pleas, and so she went through with the birth, and she actually died because of they called it a septic miscarriage. So it was a lot of bacteria and other other things involved that created that terror, created that a danger to the mother, leading up to her death.
The eighth, I think what they call it, the Eighth Amendment or the Eighth or something like that. I've seen a lot of people calling repeal the Eighth. Basically it outlaws any and all abortions with the exception of the immediate danger to life of the mother. So they have to wait until the mother is literally in the process of dying as they speak before they can actually abort and try to save her life.
Yeah.
And it's actually led to a lot of women dying because
it's usually too late by that point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which, by the way, I mean, a 12-week ban on abortions, that's still I wouldn't call that progressive by any means, but it's definitely a step in the right direction considering they're currently banned completely. So
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's certainly a start, and I'm sure maybe in the future if there's another referendum for everyone to vote on based on term term limit and all that, maybe they'd be more inclined to extend it.
Yeah. So I mean, and it's the Catholic Church does have an outsized voice in the Irish legislature, which is something that people have been really complaining about because they're like, why is a religion dictating our laws? And I think that's really what's kind of really pushing the repeal the Eighth, not just the stories of all the women who have died and had their health endangered because of it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I mean, and it's I've been reading stories and stuff, and women who struggle to get epilepsy medication because they have to prove they're not pregnant and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's yeah.
And another big argument that's actually being touted by the current prime minister is that so what Irish people are doing because they very much would like to get this procedure is they would go to England to get their abortion. And, Ireland happens to be the only European country left that doesn't allow this. So this,
Ireland are really fundamentalist, though.
Yeah.
To the point where there's still conflict going on because of the religious divides out there. Obviously not as bad as it could be, and it's been inflamed recently because of Brexit, but there's still a lot of sectarianism. Maybe not as bad as it was in the past, but certainly still there.
Yeah, so
yeah.
Hopefully good news. I mean, it's just exit polls, so it doesn't necessarily mean that is the case, but generally exit polls line up with the actual results most of the time.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Chris, did you have a story for us?
Indeed, I did, actually. I found a story today from The Guardian about a man named Cedric O'Bannon. This was a really, really interesting piece, and I definitely suggest all of you guys go out and read it. there was a incident in June 26 or on June 26th in 2016 that happened with this man. There was actually a neo-Nazi rally going on in I believe the capital area in California, in Sacramento, I believe. And this man, Cedric O'Bannon, went to the event and was there as a independent journalist. And what happened at that time was actually I'll read right from the thing here. It gives a good play-by-play here. It says O'Bannon, who's aged 47, arrived early to the state capitol grounds the morning of the rally. The father of three, who grew up in Northern California, has long been involved in activist groups fighting police brutality and said he wanted to be in a good position to document the events. Chaos and violence quickly erupted. The neo-Nazis were the aggressors, Bannon recalled. And in his words, quote, "It was clear who was trying to attack me and who was trying to defend me." And end quote. Police later identified at least 7 TWP men, which are the, what is it called? The Traditional Workers Party, which is a known neo-Nazi group, who were armed with knives. So 7 of these members of this group were armed with knives. One white supremacist with a long pole broke O'Bannon's camera rig, knocking his GoPro to the ground. He said, adding that when he went to pick up his equipment from the ground, that was when he was speared on the right side of his body. And so what happened was, I guess there was some neo-Nazi asshole with a knife on the end of a stick, and he was skewered by this guy after he broke the dude's camera rig. And then, yeah. Afterwards, though, is what really is interesting. The police actually, instead of going after the people that stabbed him, the police have actually brought up charges on him, Mr. O'Bannon. And they are pushing all kinds of charges on this guy. It says here, police, he alleged, did little to protect him and others from the stabbings. They let this battle go on. But O'Bannon was soon rushed to a hospital where he became worried that police would confiscate his footage, which could aid in revealing his perpetrator. When he awoke after surgery, his memory card was gone. Police left a note saying that they had seized it as evidence. So they took the footage that he had there. They've charged him with a number of different things. I'm trying to find it here real quick. I do remember reading it in here. Where are they? Jeez. But regardless of that, though, like after the event, a police investigator for the California Highway Police contacted O'Bannon, a man named Officer Ayers, or what was his first name? Crap. Donovan? Yeah, it was Donovan. Donovan Ayers was the investigator at the time. He contacted him and asked him a bunch of questions about things that kind of weren't related. After O'Bannon provided a detailed account of the moment he was stabbed, Ayers interjected, "Hey, what's your impression of Yvette Falarca?" According to a police record of the call, Falarca is one of the anti-fascist activists who was also stabbed, but ultimately charged with assault based on Ayers's investigation. So what was happening here was the cops were actually going after these anti-fascist counter-protesters harder than they were against the fascists that were there. And this is really fucked up. I mean, I can't like reiterate this enough. Like this is really messed up what was going on here. So he and 2 other activists were charged with crimes, and only one TWP member was charged with any crimes. And there was a statement that I read in here from the police to the fascist side of these things that was very peculiar, and it showed that they were basically saying, oh, here it is. The call sharply contrasted with the tone of the CHP's communications with a TWP member when officers told the neo-Nazi, quote, "We're pretty much going after anti-fascists," and assured him, "We're looking at you as a victim," to the fascist side of things. So there's some peculiar things going on here where the California Highway Police are running defense for this neo-Nazi group and going after anti-fascist protesters harder than they're going after these neo-Nazis who are the ones that brought knives and actually stabbed people.
That's actually not terribly unusual. Police like to charge protesters with violence even when they don't actually commit violence. But also especially with the history of California's cops, and particularly with racial violence. I mean, the Rodney King riots was in California.
Yeah.
The first laws that really worked to restrict gun rights were because they were afraid of African Americans with guns. So, I mean, California, as much as we like to consider them like super liberal and, super left wing, they definitely have a history of racism amongst their police forces.
They're still American.
Yep, they're still American.
Exactly.
Yeah. I just found another...
They're progressive for American standards.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like in New York, where they have some of the worst segregated districts and segregated schools in the nation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, super liberal place, but at the same time, still not quite that liberal.
Still a bit racist in some ways.
Yeah, still quite racist.
Did I mention that?
Quite racist.
Did I mention that O'Bannon is actually a black man? I may have forgot to mention.
I think you mentioned that at the first, but I don't remember.
But regardless, though, there's another part here that I wanted to point out too. It says at one point in the call when Ayers is talking to Bannon, still Ayers said the TWP men had likely stabbed O'Bannon because they thought his camera rig was a weapon. And then, quote, "I kind of get why they may have perceived you as a threat," end quote. That's what the Ayers guy, this officer, is saying to O'Bannon, who was just stabbed by the neo-Nazi. And he's saying, I can understand why they may have thought you were a threat.
He's
remember
being honest.
That guy who got shot in his grandmother's backyard while holding a cell phone? That was also in California.
Yep, yeah. Sure was. You know what this actually reminds me?
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, well, this actually reminds me of what happened in Charlottesville, which, the footage, how it showed the officers that were just idly standing by while these white supremacists were attacking the anti-fascists.
Yeah.
I mean, and of course, yeah.
Yeah, the fascists who showed up with shields and weapons and things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the same thing happened at Trump rallies all the time.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
They even mentioned
just stand by and watch.
Yeah, they even mentioned the Charlottesville situation in this piece a little bit, just saying in Charlottesville, a black man beaten by white supremacists was charged with a felony, and left-wing activists who protested at Standing Rock and at Trump's inauguration continue to face aggressive prosecutions years later. So, this isn't something new, and it's not just California. There's a lot of black people that are being attacked, that are being victimized by these white supremacists, and they're being charged with felonies and criminal activity when they're the one being attacked in the first place. And it's... How amazingly absurd is that? You wonder why the people in the black community don't like to go up to the cops in any way? Because if they go to the cops, then they're under investigation for felonies. For going to the cops of allegations of someone else putting a crime on them. You know, like where is the justice in this country? You know, it's oh god, it's so absurd, man.
I mean, and what's so depressing is you would think. I mean, in a very in a just society, like something like this taking place would be dealt with very seriously. Except it happens so often that, you know, that we tend to glaze over stories like this. And
Jordan,
and
Blue Lives Matter, man.
exactly. Man, like, oh goodness, if I had to see another flag. So, but like, also, I think what's also very like disgusting and disappointing is how like these police officers are being funded by the same people who they're targeting, who they are drawing targets onto because of perceived threat based solely off the color of their skin. Like what you said, that officer, what he said to the victim, like, yeah, I understand how they can get that idea because he got that idea because that's how he feels too. Like, you just look like a threat to me too.
Yeah.
Just because you're black, and so
yeah, it doesn't seem like it matters what you carry with yourself. It could be a camera, it could be a cell phone, it could be, I don't know, a book at this point. And cops will. Something? What's that?
You don't need to carry anything. It looks like you're carrying something.
Yeah, they can even be completely naked too. That's actually happened before, where a black person was like mentally disturbed and stripped down to nothing, and the cops still shot and killed him. So, I mean, it doesn't matter in this country. They will just kill you. And having anything in your hand is an excuse. Right.
There was actually a study done that showed like how gun owners reacted to subjects based on race. And so it showed that when it was a white subject, when there's a white subject holding a gun, they took a couple more seconds to react, because at first they didn't perceive what they were holding as a gun. I forgot what study this was, but I'll have to post it, but it's really important. And then they had like subjects of color and they were immediately alarmed, despite them not even holding a firearm. And that's what privilege is all about. It's the benefit of a doubt, you know, taking that time to actually think through, hey, this person might not be an aggressor. But you know, some people aren't afforded that same privilege, so it sucks.
Yeah. Anyway, let's see. Michael, did you have a story for us?
Yes. So
I'm trying to remember who hadn't gone yet.
Obviously the UK is still in the process of leaving the EU. In fact, Theresa May asked the EU for extra time for the transition period because obviously it's just an absolute shit show. So she reckons it's going to take 7 years now. Bear in mind, we're supposed to take 2. Personally, I reckon that she's just wanted it to be until she gets out of office and someone else will have to deal with it. But in the latest reason why Brexit is absolutely stupid, the EU is working on a satellite system to compete with the US GPS system called Galileo. It's a GPS satellite network. And obviously, the EU, when they put together this Galileo project, voted to not allow non-EU states to access the designs and things, security reasons, you know. So obviously, the UK is not going to be a member state, so they won't be able to access Galileo, and the UK is having a bit of a shit fit because of that. So the UK has decided they're going to build their own satellites with just blackjack and hookers.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So this massive project to build a GPS satellite network that's going to cost like £10 billion. Well, the UK now wants to build its own. We don't have a funded healthcare service, and they want to build a satellite network.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw a really interesting quote in that piece. I have to really find it real quick. It was pretty funny. Where is it? I gotta find it real quick. I can't find it. What the? But you go on with your story here, I guess. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So that's happening. So yeah, they want to keep going with that. They've also threatened to pull GCHQ, which is our security service, out of the EU in retribution, if you will. The thing is, after Brexit, we want cooperation between our security services, the EU and the UK, because that's just better for everyone. You know, if our security services work better, it makes everyone more secure. So we're kind of shooting ourselves in the face through our own vindication.
Yeah. I found that quote that I wanted to say. It's from John McDonnell. He's the Shadow Chancellor, apparently. He said, on the same day, the Office for National Statistics has confirmed that the UK economic growth is the weakest it's been in 6 years. It's not surprising the Chancellor is looking to focus on matters in outer space. It's just kind of funny to me.
Yeah.
I mean, it does go on, though, and he's got a decent statement here. Working people will be rightly angry that Philip Hammond can find billions of pounds at the drop of a hat for a space program, yet is not prepared to find the money our vital public services like the NHS desperately need. It's time the Chancellor came down to Earth to prove he is on the same planet as the rest of us by recognizing what he is putting people in our country through with his austerity cuts.
Yeah, which is
very good.
Well, more or less what I just said. Like, we've got no money for the NHS, schools are underfunded, public services are a mess, and suddenly you could find £10 billion for a satellite network. What? Where did this come from?
Yeah,
if you needed any more confirmation that they're cutting it just for the sake of it.
Yeah.
Bastards. Ollie, what are you doing?
For anyone out there that doesn't know, Ollie is Michael's cat.
Sorry, I'd meant to mute Mike then. The cat sat in the wardrobe and scratching away because it's a little swine.
Sad. Not winning anymore. I guess with that go, we should probably
All right,
get to the
we ready
main
for our
topic
main
finally. Oh, man.
Okay, so today's main topic, yes, we might have been delaying it a little bit out of whatever. So today's main topic is end-of-life decisions and issues. This came up recently because I mentioned a couple weeks ago that I went to my grandmother's funeral. My grandmother fell and hit her head, and she eventually died as a result of that. And it was very sudden and unexpected. My grandfather had just died last November from cancer. And it kind of just, with Grandpa's death, I mean, he'd known he was dying for like 2 years. So he was completely prepared for it. He had his will all sorted out. He had everything planned for what would happen after he died. They'd already picked out like a tombstone, a burial plot, everything. So they were completely prepared for Grandpa's death. But then with Grandma, I mean, she was in excellent health for her age, which was 81 years old. And her death was just simply an accident, a normal accident, the kind of thing that just catches you completely off guard. She hadn't updated her will since 1972. So understandably, it was very out of date. In fact, everybody mentioned in the will is no longer alive. So, I mean, no one was really prepared for it, or anything like that. So, I mean, we found ourselves scrambling and looking for things and trying to figure out what we should do. And it really just kind of brought home to me the fact that we need to discuss with our loved ones, you know, have we planned for what happens when we die? Because, you know, I mean, there's the famous saying, you know, there's two things that you can't avoid: taxes and death. Everybody dies at some point. For some people, it's a long, drawn out terminal illness. For others, it's just an accident. You fall down, or, you know, car accidents happen all the time.
Or your oven explodes.
You know, your oven explodes.
Your oven shoots you.
Your oven shoots you. You know, I mean, like, mass shootings are on the rise. All kinds of things like that. You know, so I mean, it's good to plan ahead and just be like, okay, I am prepared, because the thing that was really struck me was while we were in the waiting room at the hospital, It wasn't just the stress of, grandma's dying, and we're trying to figure out, is she even going to live? It was also trying to figure out what we were going to do. We had to, somehow get control of her financials. We had to, figure out if she had a life insurance policy, all kinds of stuff like this. Because if you have a life insurance policy, if you die, they still don't actually pay out unless someone actually files the claim. So it's no good having a life insurance policy if you don't tell anyone about it. And you have to be able to make it so that they can easily find the policy number, because a lot of times, if you don't have a policy number, they're going to fight it because they're going to try to claim it's fraud.
Yeah.
Because, there are people who try to cash in fraudulent claims. That happens. And if you wait too long to file it, they're going to say, oh, we closed that because you stopped paying on it. That happens too. I used to work at a life insurance company. I kind of am familiar with that. So, it's, and stuff like wills and funeral plans. Are you going to donate organs? Do you want to be cremated or buried? Stuff like that. These are decisions that we don't like thinking about. But unfortunately, they're things that we have to plan for.
Yeah.
There's
also if having to know whether the person would like to be resuscitated if they are in a situation where they are dying, and things like that are very, very important in this situation too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also if they are functionally brain dead, do you keep them on life support or do you take them off? Well, what would they want?
Yeah.
If you don't know, then you can't really make that decision. And also having set up ahead of time emergency plans for who can make medical or financial decisions for you, because those are different things too, by the way. And you have to go through the courts for that if you want to apply after the fact, which is very different from if you sign a document ahead of time. Then, because it's one thing, if you have a spouse who's alive and can make those decisions because they, by default, make those decisions for you. But if, in the case of my grandfather died last year. She had no spouse. She had no parents, obviously, because they died decades ago. So it fell to my dad and my aunt to make those decisions. Well, what if they disagreed? As it is, they work together and they had no problems agreeing on things.
Yeah,
but not all families are that lucky.
Disagree.
Yeah.
Yeah. What if, and it's kind of, it's a very difficult thing, because if you don't plan this stuff out ahead of time, if you don't let someone know that they're going to be the executor of your will or stuff like that, it'll catch them off guard.
Yeah.
We knew Grandma had a will. We were able to find it, but we couldn't actually read it until after she died. So we had no idea what it said. My dad was talking about how it might have named my Aunt Marcia as executor of, of the will. And she didn't want to be. But then if you don't want to be executor, you have to actually go before a judge and make a case for why you shouldn't be executor for the will. So, there's complications and stuff like that. Sorry, this is going to lean on my family experiences here.
No,
but,
it's important. It actually is a real world experience on these kinds of things, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, and it's difficult. We were lucky in a way because we didn't have to scramble locating a funeral, a burial plot or a tombstone, because we already had the burial plot and we already had the tombstone because Grandpa had just died last year. In fact, they had just finished carving the tombstone and they were actually getting ready to place it out there in the cemetery. So
Damn.
In that way, they were just like, well, okay, just add when she died, but
wow.
so, it was,
yeah.
So, yeah, that's
yeah, this stuff is really important to talk about. I want to point everyone to this this website that I actually am going to be posting on here that you actually shared with us, Aubrey. It's from the National Institute on Aging. I found this really, really important to read through. They give a ton of different questions that you should be asking the physician if you are tasked with making a decision in the matter. And there's also I just want to read it here. Like, if you are making decisions for someone at the end of life and are trying to use one of these approaches, they list a few different approaches, two approaches on approaching this. It may be helpful to think about the following questions, though, and these questions I think were really, really important for everyone to be thinking about in these times. Has the dying person ever talked about what he or she would want at the end of life? Has he or she expressed an opinion on or about how someone else was being treated? What were his or her values in life? What gave meaning to life? Maybe it was being close to family, watching them grow, making them memories together. Perhaps just being alive was the most important thing. And so these questions are things that I think everyone should be asking when they're tasked with actually having to make these decisions in these situations. When you have to deal with the end of life care and all that, they go on to list a whole long bullet point of a bunch of different questions to ask the doctor. I don't know if you guys want me to read them all out here. There's a decent amount of them. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 of them or so.
Grab 2 or 3.
Just 2 or 3.
All right. Well,
It show's going to be long enough as it is.
Yeah, it says here, though, as a decision maker, without specific guidance from the dying person, you need as much information as possible on what to base your actions. You might ask the doctor the following 12 questions, but I'm not going to list all of the 12. You guys can definitely go to this website. It's a really good read. I think everyone should check it out. Just read the first few here. What might we expect to happen in the next few hours, days, or weeks if we continue our current course of treatment? Why is this new test being suggested? Will it change the current treatment plan? Will a new treatment help my relative get better? And it just keeps going on and getting more specific from there and everything. And it's like, if you don't try this treatment, what will happen? And things like that are in there. And so I would say if ever you guys out there are tasked with something like this, having to make decisions like this, I would definitely go to this list of questions. These are really, really important for this. But yeah, I mean, did you guys have anything else to talk about on these regards? Like, this is dealing with a person that's in the hospital, I guess, and they're trying to figure out what to do since the sick person or the dying person isn't able to speak for themselves.
Well,
Yeah,
I was considering avoiding this topic this week. I just take a week off because
it's a tough one.
it's actually
It's really tough.
I've been on end of life care. You guys may know when my kidneys went, it was pretty dramatic. I was basically dying in about 5 different ways.
I think Michael's just being a little bit over dramatic about it, and personally.
Yeah.
No.
Well, basically, it came down to a point where the doctor said, in about 20 minutes, he might die.
Mhm.
If he survives that, then he might start getting better.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Jesus.
But that's apparently exactly what they told my
Holy
mother.
shit.
yeah.
Yeah, it was that fine.
Wow.
Fortunately, I was young, not old, and I didn't have anyone depending on me or anything. But it is quite a sensitive topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Understandable.
It's difficult, and really it's best to plan ahead. And I think that's really just kind of what I want to talk about here is we need to be better about planning ahead. I mean, I know us Americans in particular, we like to wait till the absolute last minute when it's a fucking emergency with our hair on fire before we actually take action and do things.
Let's be honest. That's human nature.
Yeah, but Americans are particularly bad at it.
Yeah.
Americans are particularly bad. I mean,
I'll give you that.
Just plan ahead. I mean, I know it's a difficult conversation. thanks to soap operas and stuff, you might have family members wondering if they're going to end up knocked off by you. But I mean, it is important to talk to your family members about it. Talk to your parents, talk to, your kids, your, stuff like that. Because, I mean, we don't like talking about it. We even use fancy terms to cover up what we're talking about, like saying passed away. Like,
palliative care.
Yeah. You know, I mean, it's to the point where, we disguise it, they've gone to be with the Lord now. Oh, they fell asleep, or something like that. Stuff like that. I mean, it's, put your pet to sleep.
Yeah, you posted a good video on that specifically, about like how we really tend to avoid the D words, which is death, dying, and dead, and all that, and we use things like passed away, like you said, or seriously ill. Instead of them dying, we're just saying they're seriously ill, and that's harder to understand as being they're dying, it
takes away the edge from it. It makes us think that, oh, it's okay. It's not as big a deal.
Seriously ill is like, it just has a really nasty flu.
Yeah, or, it could end up really bad, but it could also be fine. It's...
Yeah. It takes away from the gravity of the situation in some ways.
Yeah, it's... I mean, and I was listening because I was at my grandmother was transferred to a hospice when it became clear that the swelling in her brain was just not gonna, it was just getting too serious and she was gonna end up dying. Because for a while there, they thought that she might recover enough to go to a nursing home. But they didn't think that she would ever be the same because the brain damage had been so extensive. But I was there when she died, I mean, and she was kind of breathing hard and stuff. And then all of a sudden she just sort of, it suddenly went from every couple seconds to every 30 seconds. And then she just exhaled and didn't inhale. And it was just like that. She never regained consciousness, nothing like that. But we just kind of stood there, and in a way it was very anticlimactic. I mean, I was just sitting in the chair teasing my dad, while he and my aunt were trying to decide, who was going to stay for the night and stuff. And then all of a sudden we noticed that we hadn't heard Grandma breathe in, and we glanced over, and that was when it started switching to the every 30 seconds. But it was very peaceful. She wasn't really struggling for breath. She wasn't in pain. At least there was no outward sign of pain, and that I think it was a BBC video, talks about how, most of the time it's not really a horrific thing that we build it up to in our minds. It's not like the violent deaths and stuff that you see with gunshot wounds and stuff.
Or on TV deaths and stuff.
Or
it's
on
not
TV
usually
deaths.
that dramatic. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a moment before you die where your body starts turning off.
Yeah.
And you stop feeling different bits of your body, your anatomy. So even if you're in pain, it kind of disconnects for a while, if that makes sense. It is in my experience.
Yeah. Well, and it's... Yeah. So, I mean, and it's also... Yeah, I mean, your brain has ways of dealing with it and stuff, and as you're towards the end, it's going to start sort of disconnecting from different parts of your body, like you said, Michael. So, I mean, but I mean, even then, my young cousin was there. He's 4 years old, and he was kind of taken aside, and it was kind of gently explained to him that Grandma was, that she was dead, that she died. And then he came running back out, and he came straight up to me and he said, "My grandma's dead now." And it was just kind of I just kind of looked at him and I was just kind of yeah, I know, and it's, I didn't think anything of it, but then his parents just kind of took him to the side and said, we don't say that. We say she's passed away, and then they started trying to explain to him that Grandma's soul was now in heaven, and he had no concept of a soul. He didn't know what it was. And I mean, me being atheistic, I just really did not want to hear them essentially brainwashing him into their religion, you know, indoctrinating him into it. But I think also just hearing that kind of also drove home to me just how a lot of our religious ideas and stuff, they're not actually something that's native to us. I mean, he grew up going to church every Sunday, every Wednesday. You know, he's, you know, been at the church since he was a baby. Yeah. But even he had no real concept of what a soul is.
Yeah, I mean...
And it's just something that we tell ourselves to comfort ourselves. You know, Grandma's in a better place now.
Exactly. Like that, when someone says that to someone about like after you die, kids probably aren't going to be able to conceptualize that very well. So they might think that like their grandma in her entirety, her body and everything go to heaven.
He kept saying her body is going to heaven. You know, and they kept correcting him, no, her body stays here. Her body's empty now. You know, and it was kind of childish in and of itself, but it really just disturbed me. And I think another thing, because people talk about how, you know, like atheists have issues with, you know, oh, you know, they can't face death and stuff like that. And no, I can face it. I mean, I grieved. I like bawled my eyes out and everything. But then after I had like my little breakdown, I was okay. I'd moved on, you know?
Yeah.
But then like I saw my family later at the funeral and they were still they were having issues with it, like more than I was, because I had accepted that she was gone now and that I would never see her again. And that focusing on my memories of her sort of, you know, that stuff like that.
Yeah. In some ways I can see that kind of thing. Like when religious family members like that are still grieving, I understand grieving and everything.
Oh, yeah. I understand the grieving process.
Yeah. But what I want to say, though, is that, like, that in some ways to me, if you're crying about your loved one going to and dying, like, that to me, like, if you're trying to tell yourself they're in a better place and going to heaven, why would you be crying then? If you don't actually believe your own religious texts yourself. I don't know. Like, that to me seems a little interesting, at least.
Yeah. And it was also like,
but
when I was grieving, I didn't want to hear any of that false hope. I didn't want to hear that narrative because it just pissed me off, you know? And I don't know. I'm not afraid of death myself.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways...
I obviously don't want to die, but, you know, it's not some scary thing to me.
Exactly. I think in some ways we all fear death, but also in our own ways we also can also not fear death as well. You know, like, we all know it's going to come. Well, so you
everyone has their own ways of coping with it, their own ways of coming to terms with it in their mind. I mean... I didn't break down when Grandpa died. Not like I did when Grandma did. And I think that was because I had several years to get used to the idea that there was coming a day when Grandpa was just going to die. And it was coming. And I knew it was coming. And I mean, my aunt even commented that, you know, it wasn't like this when he died.
Yeah.
You know, it's... Actually, I have a question about that because I currently have a grandmother with dementia, and she's slowly kind of, slowly fading. And I recently seen her for Mother's Day, and I just realized, I looked into her and just realized that that person who have always been there for my whole life isn't necessarily there in the same capacity as she's been, you know, before. And it kind of, you know, made me accept like what was coming in a sense, knowing that like I'm getting this chance to, like, to me, the person who I, you know, have shared all these meaningful times with is no longer present. And so it kind of, you know, the fact that her physical self will no longer be here is kind of patterned by the fact that her you know, the mind of my grandmother is no longer here.
Yeah, and Alzheimer's and dementia are particularly difficult for people to deal with because the mind goes long before the body does in those particular cases.
Mm.
And that's harder, I think, to deal with than cases with cancer, like I dealt with my grandfather. Because they're still there, but they're not the people that you know anymore. They're not the people that you know and love. And it's harder, I guess, because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in some ways, part of the thing that happens here in America is like we're all so very like sensitized when it comes to death and everything. We never see it on a daily basis, and we're sort of like protected from it in a lot of ways. Like we see a lot of like killing and stuff in like TV shows and movies and stuff, but like that's not the real thing either, you know. And I mean, in some ways, it feels like a cultural problem that like we can't really handle dealing with actual death in some way, even though we have to, as human beings, we have to be able to deal with death.
Man.
Yeah, it's not pretty, and it's not, you know, entertaining. So we hide it away out of sight. We send people off to hospices to die. You know, it's terrifying. It's difficult. I mean, it's bad enough even just with our pets. We don't even want to deal with it then. I mean, the number of people who talk about, you know, oh, we had to put our dog down, or we had to, you know, put our cat to sleep. They won't even say the term, you know.
It's tough.
And it's because you form that emotional connection and you don't want to think of it in those terms. But yeah, and then related to that, like particularly with, you know, like when it comes to, you know, I mean, there's been several death with dignity laws that have been passed and proposed across the United States. I believe Vermont was the first to pass it, and then I believe Oregon passed it as well. And Hawaii recently passed a very limited one, and I think there's one that passed in California too. Although I believe that one's being challenged in the courts. Basically, the death with dignity is essentially assisted suicide for those with terminal illnesses. I think Hawaii's is the most limited in that it only allows you to actually access the physician-assisted suicide when you have only 6 months to live, which I disagree with because in my own personal experience, those predictions can be wildly off. I mean, my grandfather was expected to have another year, and he ended up going within a month. He just deteriorated quickly and he was gone.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, not that he would have opted for that anyway. I mean, fundamentalist Christian, but it's kind of the whole, and humans are comforted by the idea of having control over their situation. You know, even if they don't actually exercise that control. I think for a lot of people, knowing that they have the option to end their pain legally and safely and in a painless way, I think that would give people a lot more sense of comfort and less fear around facing the end of their life. Knowing that that's an option, even if they don't take that option, because the vast majority of people with terminal illnesses aren't going to opt for this physician-assisted suicide. That's been the case literally everywhere it's been legalized. But there are plenty of people who have chosen for it. I mean, there was a couple in Oregon. They both had terminal illnesses, and they both decided to opt for it, and they basically took their pills and went to bed and passed in their sleep together because they didn't want to live without each other. You know, so I mean, and That's one option. I know, is it Switzerland's, Michael, that allows for people who are suicidal to also go through the program?
Was it not Holland?
Or was it Holland? I know it's someplace in Europe. They passed it.
One of the two.
Yeah. But even then, you have to go through immense counseling for I think almost 2 years before they'll actually give you that option.
Mm-hmm. It needs to be signed
which,
off on by the psychologist.
Yeah, I mean, you have to go through counseling and psychologists where basically to make sure that, this is something that you actually want to do and that you literally don't feel you have any other options with your life. And I personally support that. I know there's other people who don't. I don't like limiting it just to terminal illnesses because, and I think having a system like that where you can sign up for physician-assisted suicide, but you have to go through counseling and actually get help, would actually help a hell of a lot of people who are planning on suicide. Because for a lot of them, they don't have the resources or they feel like they can't talk to anyone about it. But if it was accepted and there was an actual program to actually go to a physician, go through counseling and stuff like that, I think it would actually probably reduce our suicide rate.
Yeah. Yeah. The fact that if as a society and just as a society, we stigmatized the thought of suicide, pretty much to say that you're not it doesn't make you extremely different. This is a thought that many of us have had, and we have these programs in order to assist you and to get better or to try to overcome that. That would be a really nice gesture as society.
Yeah, I mean, and I've been suicidal before. It's a couple times actually. And I mean, and it's very difficult to work through. And it's especially difficult when you feel like you can't actually talk to anyone about it.
Yeah. Right.
And that's what most people who are considering suicide feel like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think a lot of people in the modern age have suicidal thoughts once in a while. I think it's more common than people realize it is.
Yeah.
Or willing to accept.
That's true too, yeah.
And also, I mean, a lot of the stigma around suicide, at least in our culture, traces back to the Catholic Church. Because back in the Middle Ages, the Catholic Church, back in medieval times, they actually passed a new doctrine, I think, from the Vatican. Actually, I'm not sure it was technically the Vatican at that point. The Pope's office. It moved around. It hasn't always been in Rome. There was actually 2 popes at one. But history is fun. But but basically, they said that anyone that commits suicide automatically goes to hell. And so, I mean, that really, I think, I mean, there's lots of reasons why they passed that. I mean, there's lots of speculation regarding why they passed that particular doctrine. But it's also something that I think that kind of set the stage for stigmatizing suicide within Christianity. Because I know there are actually several non-Catholics, several Protestants, evangelicals that also believe that anyone who commits suicide will automatically go to hell. Kind of like there's people who are not Catholics, but they still, celebrate Lent and, all that other stuff. And they still believe in limbo and stuff, despite the fact it's not actually a Catholic doctrine anymore. Turns out God changed his mind on that. But sorry, random shots at Christianity there. Shots fired.
Pretty much, yeah.
But I mean, so it's something that, which in Christianity has long sort of said, oh, don't worry about how shitty your life is now because, this is what God, this is where God put you. It's where he wants you. Deal with it. And hey, you're going to live in paradise after you die. But don't kill yourself. Don't kill yourself. Please don't. No, you'll
They still
go to
need
hell.
peasants.
Yeah, it's almost a weird hangover of feudalism. It's the idea that God puts everyone where they're meant to be.
Well, and that's kind of where the idea comes from.
Mm.
Well, sort of, because it's also present in the New Testament too. I mean, Paul definitely does make that argument.
Yeah, I mean, you got to keep the peasants
Republicans.
and the slaves in line, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah. So I mean,
Well,
and
it's also, it was one way the royalty used to impose their order because they'd say, "Well, I'm the king because God wants me to be the king." So
yeah,
can't rebel, can
that's the divine right.
yeah,
all
divine
that.
right.
Yeah. But yeah, it's challenging because it's especially with modern culture because it's sometimes very difficult to disentangle what is genuinely like our culture and what came out of religion, because Christianity has been so entangled with cultures in Western Europe and North America.
that's true.
To the point where a lot of times we have sort of inherited traditions and stuff that we don't really think about where it came from or why we do what we do. And then if you look into it, you're like, oh, that came out of Christianity, which oftentimes appropriated it from pagans. But hey.
Why is the groom not allowed to see the bride before the wedding?
Bad luck. Yeah.
Bad luck? Weird. Where'd that come from?
That actually sort of came out of Christian. Well,
Might have. I don't
I'm
know.
not sure about that one. It's probably a superstition that
Yeah.
I'd have to look into that.
It's on those lines.
I mean,
though.
like-
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of, particularly around weddings and funerals, there's all kinds of traditions and stuff that definitely stem from Christianity, but also specifically from people's roles in society.
Yeah.
I mean, like, giving away the bride. That goes back to women being the property of their husbands or their fathers, and then that property being transferred to the husband. I got really irritated during my grandmother's funeral because the pastor, who was the pastor of the church my grandmother attended, he kept referring to her as Mrs. Daryl Steinberger. Her name was Joy Lee. Her name was not Daryl. It was Joy Lee.
Yeah.
And everything he said about her, it just drove home to me that he didn't know her. Yeah, she wasn't a loud and outspoken person like my grandfather was. She was kind of quiet, and she was more than happy to be in the background. But, she was still an individual and a person. So,
For sure.
I don't know. Yeah, and it just really pissed me off.
Yeah.
Then he decided to randomly sing in the middle of the sermon again.
Well, that's always good.
I think like all of this just underscores like why it's so important to live. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, like just like the quality of life. I mean, that's why like, like making sure everyone lives a decent life, and so are provided either appropriate like social services when they need them and get the same level of opportunity as everyone else as their neighbor is so important, because like mortality is like birth and mortality are the only phenomenons that every being has in common. And like knowing something as serious is on the eventual path for every single one of us should be enough of a reason to want to like improve your life and the lives of others so much. Just instead of building barriers in order to impede other people's livelihoods and quality of life, because they're quote unquote different.
Yeah.
And it's like it's all futile. It's all futile in the scheme of things. So just like enjoy your time and make sure that you don't get in the way of other people enjoying their time. Make sure that what they're doing is not impeding on your desire to have a good time.
Yeah. And I would also say that like just because someone is fiscally irresponsible does not mean that they shouldn't be able to get the health care that they need. And that's an argument
Definitely.
in favor of universalized health care. There are fiscally irresponsible people in this world. There's a lot of them.
And they don't deserve to die for it.
Exactly. They don't
Yeah,
deserve
and-
to not get the treatment they need when they need it.
Mhm.
And it doesn't even necessarily mean that they're fiscally irresponsible. You know, they could just simply
No,
be
not at all.
unlucky. I mean,
I know that my
I-
healthcare,
Go
up
ahead.
until my transplant, and including the transplant, cost about 400 grand. Now, no level of fiscal responsibility would have had me been able to pay for that,
Yeah.
or my parents for that matter. There is no, well, you just need to save up a bit. It's not going to happen. That's
yeah,
not.
it's,
Yeah.
I mean, I had a good insurance policy, health insurance policy, when I worked for that life insurance company. I had to go to the emergency room while on that insurance policy. About 6 months later, I got a bill for $800 that my insurance company did not pay for. That $800 bill ate up all of my savings.
Jeez.
And then for the next 6 months, I continued to get small little bills from the hospital.
Yeah. I remember a time when I was actually working, I actually hurt myself on the job. I actually sliced my finger with like a deli slicer. It was a very, very small cut, and thankfully so, but it wouldn't stop bleeding. So
Yeah.
I went to the emergency room, and they were supposed to pay it with workman's comp, and they fought that apparently, and took forever for them to actually do anything with that. But I remember getting a bill after that. I got a little tiny bandage for my finger, and it was hundreds of dollars. I don't remember if it was over $1,000, but I wouldn't be surprised at this point if it was. It was at the very least like $600, just for a tiny little bandage for my pinky. That's it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, and it's-
insanity.
My friend had to end up taking the ambulance to the hospital when she was having stomach pains. She was afraid it was her appendix. She got the bill several months later for $400 just for the ambulance ride.
Yeah.
I mean, when she got that, she's like, "Damn, I wish I would have had mom drive me."
It's a really fucked up situation in the world when you would say, like, damn, I shouldn't have actually taken advantage of the healthcare system that we have.
I know.
Like, how fucked
And
up is that?
I saw an article a couple days ago about people who take Ubers to the hospital now because, it's so much cheaper. You just pay like $12 to go to the hospital as opposed to, hundreds of dollars, depending on how far you have to go.
Yeah.
And then also in a lot of states, particularly here in Iowa, a lot of our rural hospitals are closing. So people are having to travel further and further to get to a doctor.
There's also
for any doctor.
Yeah.
My grandmother fell in Newton, Iowa, which is about a half hour from Des Moines. They have a hospital in Newton, Skiff's Hospital. It was a charity hospital that was started by a guy named Skiff, hence its name Skiff. It was recently bought out by Mercy. Mercy has since removed the emergency room from Skiff Hospital. So when my grandmother fell, the ambulance took her to Des Moines, to the large Mercy Hospital in downtown Des Moines. My aunt didn't actually know that. So she got in the car and she drove to Skiff's, expecting to meet, the ambulance there. Except, it wasn't there. So they spent about a half hour panicking, trying to figure out where she was before they found out, oh, she went to Des Moines. So then they had to get in the car and drive to Des Moines.
Jeez.
I'm lucky that I live here in Ames where our hospital, McFarland, is, owned by the community and is still pretty well funded. So, and it serves like a lot of northern central Iowa. So, it's still got a large customer base and everything. So, it's still going pretty good.
Customer base.
I just got the image, yeah.
Customer base. Yeah.
It's such an interesting term to use for a hospital, customer base.
Yeah.
Because when I fell, I didn't really, I wasn't given a choice about where to go, like I would have been if I'd fallen in Des Moines. But, when I fell and broke my ankle, but, they just took me there and I was there in like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Actually, less. I think it was 5 minutes.
I just go to the nearest hospital.
Yeah.
Screw you, Michael, and your damn universal healthcare.
But I mean, I will
Like
say,
if I get sick in Manchester, I go to Manchester. If I get sick in Oldham, I go Oldham. I got sick in Lancaster once, and I went to Lancaster. You just go.
Yeah, you just go to the nearest hospital. You don't have to worry about whether it's in network or out of network or anything like that.
It's all network. It's all under the NHS.
Yeah.
There's no private emergency cover in the UK.
Yeah.
There's private non-emergency cover, but not all emergency cover is an ambulance cover is public.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I think, the way it should be. I mean, basically, so all the rural hospitals in Iowa, they're almost all charity and secular. I mean, like McFarland, it was a charity hospital donated to the city by a guy, or no, not McFarland. I'm sorry, it's Mary Greeley Hospital. McFarland is the clinic attached to it. Mary Greeley. It was donated by the guy in memory of his wife, Mary. I mean, it's not religious at all. Meanwhile, if I go to Des Moines, there are 4 hospitals in Des Moines. Mercy, which is Catholic, Methodist, Lutheran, and then there's Broadlawns, which is a charity hospital.
That bemuses me as well. Religious hospitals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I've been to all 4 of the different hospitals in Des Moines. I can definitely say my best experience being in a hospital is at Mary Greeley, the smaller hospital, which is secular. It is, yeah.
Well, I have my hospital that I'm under for my outpatient care for my transplant. And if I got sick, it's best that I go to that one because they've got my nose and specialist doctors. But if I get sick, I can go to any hospital in the country, technically. So when I was at Lancaster, it was like 3 a.m. I decided I need to go to the hospital. I just turned up at the A&E and I spent a day in there. And there was no worries about it or anything. Just, yeah, I'm always like dumbstruck a little bit by when I hear Americans telling the healthcare stories. Oh, yeah, I had to get my arm was bleeding. I didn't want to pay the ambulance fee, so I had to get in a taxi. And go, what? you got a taxi?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is ridiculous the lengths we go to here because of our private healthcare system.
Yeah. And I just wanted to add one last thing before we wrap up. I don't know how long we've been going. I need to really figure out a way to track that a little bit better than I do. But yeah, I mean, there's another phenomenon that is uniquely American that happens way too often. And it's this little thing called medical vacations. And what that is if someone needs a major medical procedure done, there's a lot of Americans that will actually just get a plane ticket to another country and get the procedure done in another country because it's actually cheaper to do in the other country than it is to do it here.
Foreigners can come to the UK and pay the NHS to do surgeries and stuff, and use our private healthcare service, obviously. There's a lot of Americans that come to the UK for treatment, even as the Republicans and the Americans are saying, we don't want a healthcare like the US, while Americans are coming to the UK for their healthcare.
Because it's cheaper over there.
Yeah, it's cheaper. Yeah. I've read a stat, something like it was cheaper for American, instead of getting like I can't remember surgery, I think maybe something to do with the heart or a transplant or something. It was cheaper for them to, instead of having it in the US, it was cheaper for them to fly to Spain, have the operation, or hip replacement, that's what it was. Yeah. It was cheaper for them to fly to Spain, have the hip replacement, live in Madrid for a year, have another hip replacement, and then go back and fly back to the US than it was to get it in the US.
Oh, God. Not shocking.
I know, yeah. My grandmother's had both of her hips replaced, one of them twice, because they used bad materials and it basically malformed or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and those...
It was supposed to be like, like a ball and socket. It actually kind of ended up like the metal bent, so it wasn't working right.
That's not ideal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they had to replace it again.
Those are the fiscally responsible people, though, that are actually going across the ocean just to get medical treatment. You know, like
Yeah.
those
Well,
people
and-
saved their damn money just to do that. You
But-
know, they were able to do it.
Yeah, and doing it that way doesn't necessarily mean that they're not actually paying the full cost, because most of the time, unless they get some kind of insurance plan within those countries, they have to pay the full. They have to bear the
Yeah, they have to
full
pay the
cost
entire
of
thing.
their hospitalization.
Yeah, and it's
You know,
still
it's-
cheaper.
It's still cheaper than having it done here.
Hmm.
And I mean, people talk about the waiting lines in to see the doctor in the UK and in Canada.
I've been to my GP. I don't usually go to the GP. I usually go to the hospital. My next hospital appointment's in July. And rather than make another one, I decided to go to my GP. I booked my appointment on the Thursday. I got my appointment Monday morning. And I'm going to have some tests done on Tuesday. So it's not actually that bad.
Yeah. I mean, I've had it where I've had I've been feeling bad. I thought, maybe I had the flu. I call into the doctor's office, my family's doctor office, to set up an appointment, and I find out I have to wait about a week to get in to see the doctor. By which point I'll probably be over whatever it is I'm sick with. So then that's where people are like, why even bother going to the doctor? But
There
I mean,
is
like,
something though. I mean, a lot of Americans conflate non-emergency wait times with emergency wait times.
yeah.
So they'll say, "Oh my God, you have to wait like 6 months for a hip transplant, for a hip replacement."
Oh,
I don't want to be bleeding out and have to wait 6 months. No, okay, no.
Wait.
Whoa,
Like,
that's not how it
my
works.
grandmother, when she scheduled her hip replacements, she had to wait about 6 months to a year to actually get her hip
I
replacement.
don't know what the times are. I mean, it's 6
You know,
months.
and I mean,
I guess, but
when I came up here to Ames and I went to a new doctor, they're like, okay, we have about 3 or 4 doctors who are accepting patients. It's going to be about 2 weeks before we can get you in. Or not 2 weeks, it was 2 months. I had to wait 2 months to see a doctor here in the United States.
oh, we
Yeah.
have if you go to a GP's office, but you're not registered with that GP, you can still see a doctor.
GP being a general practitioner, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not just a hospital. You can actually just go into any doctor's surgery and be like,
Yeah,
I need
that's
to-
like
I need to see a
our
doctor.
doctor clinics here.
I need to see a doctor. And they'll go, yeah, okay. It's like
Yeah.
if you're in Scotland for a week or something and you get sick, sure, you see a doctor.
Yeah, I'm sure if it'd been like an emergency or something, they probably could have found an opening for me. But I mean, just like as a new patient looking to make that clinic my, future doctor, like primary care doctor, I had to wait 2 months to see a doctor who would have an opening.
Yeah, so there's still
I mean,
waiting
that's,
times here
that's
in
a
America.
long time to wait
But
to see a
they-
doctor.
But they conflate that with the emergency wait time. It's like, if I'm bleeding out, I don't want to wait 6 months. Like, that's not how it works.
Yeah,
You
no,
won't,
that's
Emergency
yeah.
patients
ridiculous.
are prioritized for obvious reasons.
Yeah, that's just go to the ER or the A&E, I think you guys call it.
Yeah,
But yeah, so, I mean, it's ridiculous.
accident emergency, we call it. You say
yeah.
the emergency room, it's accident emergency, we're at A&E.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's. Duh. Yeah, we have a lot of problems with our system.
Basically, we
I mean,
need
we do
a.
too. Most of them are Tories.
Yeah. Basically, we
I
need
don't-
a universal healthcare system here in America. That's basically what we need.
And I
Being-
mean, like,
Fiscally responsible or not, or whatever your situation is, you deserve healthcare. I don't care what your situation is. You could be a criminal. You definitely still deserve
You still
healthcare.
deserve healthcare, yeah.
and we need to bring our vision and dental care into our general health care, too. There's
We
no
need to
reason for
improve-
it to be separate.
There is NHS dentists, but we need to improve
Yeah.
dental care in the UK.
I mean, it's
Mitt Romney,
ridiculous.
way back in
costs.
his election, Mitt Romney made a comment about, do we want public healthcare? Look at the UK and their teeth. Do we really want teeth like the UK? Dental care is one of the only parts of the healthcare service over here that's not nationalised. So,
Yeah, go figure.
and that's why it's the worst part of our healthcare.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I regularly have to wait 3 months to get in to see my dentist. That's the dentist I've been going to since I was like 3 years old. And granted, they're not open very often, and it's literally one dentist there. But I mean, part of the problem is also finding someone who will accept your insurance. Right now, I'm currently on Medicaid because I'm a full-time student and I don't have a job. When I first started trying to find a dentist up here in Ames, I could not find anyone who would accept Medicaid. Despite the fact that we have privatized our Medicaid here in this state, which is fucking stupid, and it's actually offered through Delta Dental, which is the #1 dental provider, like dental insurance provider in the country. And they all accept Delta Dental, but they don't accept Medicaid Delta Dental. So I still have to go to Des Moines to get, to go to the dentist. And I was like, fuck it, I'm going to the dentist I've always gone to. I literally called every single dentist in Ames. None of them would accept my insurance. Sorry.
Yeah. About 99 problems and there's always 98 of them.
Yeah. Fucking Republicans.
It says something about a society when some people go to prison on purpose to get health care. But I think with that, though, we really should wrap it up. I'm not sure how far we're over time, but...
we've probably got like a 2-hour-long show again.
Maybe a little bit over an hour and a half at this point. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But
hey, what do you know?
Yeah.
Making progress, I guess.
This is what progress looks like, ladies and gentlemen. But anyway, guys, thanks. We're probably going to need to talk more in the future on the medical system. We've talked about it in the past, but there's still so much to be said because it's so messed up. But with that, guys, thank you everyone for tuning in another week. We really appreciate you guys, and you can get in touch with us actually through our Discord, which will be linked in the description of this through Libsyn. I don't know if you guys have seen those links or anything. If you go through the Libsyn website, you can get all the sources, the source material for our shows, and our social links. We have an email address in there. Our Facebook is on there as well. Our Discord link, like I said, is on there. And also, if you want to donate to our Patreon to help us out here a little bit and try and build this show, that's on there as well at patreon.com. With that, guys, have a great week. And you guys, you other guys here with me, you want to say a little bit of goodbye for the audience?
No, you did everything I wanted to say. Badger, mate.
Just talk to your families. I know it's going to be awkward. It's going to be difficult. But it's necessary. This stuff is important, and ignoring it doesn't make it go away.
Did Jordan fall asleep, by the way? Is he still here?
Nope, sorry. Hey, no,
wow,
there he is.
I was just about to say to lose Jordan.
Jeez. What do you want to know if I have anything to say?
Say a little goodbye and I love you to the audience before, like a nice little kiss goodnight kind of thing to the audience.
Oh, jeez.
Yo, homies, don't do drugs.
Oh God, Michael.
Oh,
you just need to stop,
Nancy
Brett.
Reagan says just say no.
Brat.
Well, honestly, carpe diem. That's all I got.
Seize the day.
Fair enough.
Seize the carp is what that is, right? Anyway, guys, have a great week.